to the Postmodern Art Podcast, the podcast dedicated to giving artists who are wowing the world over the platform they deserve. I'm your host, Ragland, and for today's episode, let's pony up to a fantastic artist whose love for My Little Pony and such can really be shown on full display. Today's guest is GatorGoatJohnny, an artist and video essayist whose love for My Little Pony has led to some interesting discussion on their YouTube channel, among other things. This was a guest that was, once again, recommended to me by the fantastic Tipsy J Hearts, and honestly, I'll be honest, I didn't know what I was expecting going into this conversation, but I am so glad I got introduced to Johnny. I think today's episode should be a good extension of that, more than anything else, because we have fun, fantastic conversation that I know you guys are going to absolutely love. If you enjoy our guest, please make sure you support him with the links down in the description below. If you enjoy the podcast, make sure you like, share, subscribe, or follow whatever audio streaming platform you prefer. Leave 5 stars wherever you can. You know I see that stuff, and you know it genuinely warms my heart. Speaking of subscribe, we have hit our goal, people. We have hit 2,000 subs on the YouTube channel. I will be talking a lot more at the end of the podcast on how much it means to me, but for those that are listening to this the week that it debuts, that means you guys now have the opportunity to design and decide what tattoo I will be getting. There will be a Blue Sky link in the description below where you can go to either put your recommendation on what I should have tattooed on my body or go through the replies and like what you think is the best design to be tatted onto me. Submissions will be closed as of this upcoming Sunday, December 15th. Yes, I remember the date right. The poll for what the design will be out the following day, and that poll will end on December 22nd. So if you guys want to be a part of that decision, please make sure you check out the post in the first place today. And if that's not enough love and support for this podcast, may I recommend you check out the merch shop on fourthwall.com. Link to that is also in the description below. We have some fantastic designs as done by some outstanding artists, and I think you will look sensational in that design today. But now, without further ado, please enjoy the Postmodern Art Podcast. Alright, Johnny, before we really get going, I must ask the icebreaker question of the podcast, if I may. Let's say you get to go to a desert island on your own accord. It is just you, alone with your thoughts. You get to kick back, relax, breathe, truly enjoy yourself for a little bit. With accommodations, you're not stranded on some random island. It's like, yeah, it's got accommodations, like a personal B&B paradise away from society for a little bit.
Okay.
To make sure you don't go completely insane on this island, you can bring one piece of media or one piece of art with you to help whatever kind of headspace you want on this island. If given this opportunity, what would that one piece be?
One piece of media or one piece of artwork?
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to go with the safe answer. The Nintendo 64 game, Super Mario 64.
Okay.
I think in terms of skill ceilings, one of my comfort videos is like speed runs or exploitation footage of a game that is closing in on 30 years old. I think there's enough there. I did for a very brief window speed run that game, and I think that there's a ton of content in there for how quickly that was rushed out. It wasn't meant to be absolutely shattered by speedrunners, but there's a lot going on there that I think would be a good use of my time. I considered, is there ever a position where artwork would be a choice there? There have been a couple of paintings. We have a restaurant in town called Soho. And one thing I liked is that they put really generic like cityscapes in the background, and one of them really caught my eye. It's I think it's what is the name of the Broadway or whatever on New York? It was a shot from the floor level, and there are 3 levels of space. There's across the street they have the marquee, and then behind them they have like a skyscraper building, and then even behind that there's a different layer of space because you can see a plane kind of flying in the background. Yeah, I like those layers of space, but I think it's gonna have to stick with the game. I think there's just too much there for how little space it would occupy.
I mean, to be fair, especially when it comes to like when it comes to the art piece phase, I mean, it just depends on what you consider art, because there's a million different things you can consider art, not just like paintings or whatnot. But regardless, like especially when it comes to Super Mario 64, I mean, I think you perfectly illustrated with what they were able to do in such little time, with how busted it could be, but also like how much of a complete gaming experience it is. It leaves for literally hours of entertainment, like days of entertainment. I mean, look how long it has lasted up to this point. I mean, if that's not a testament to its legacy, I don't know what is.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot there.
But regardless, Super Mario 64, that is your answer. You're locking that in.
Yes, please.
Then if that's the case, I cannot think of a better way to start the Postmodern Art Podcast. Welcome, everyone. I am your host, Nathan Ragland. Feel free to like, share, subscribe, or follow whatever audio streaming platform you prefer. You would look fantastic in the merch we have at the merch shop. Go to fourthwall.com. Link to that is in the description below. And follow us on Blue Sky, Instagram, TikTok, and most social media platforms at Postmod Art Pod for future updates and guest announcements, including today's guest. He is an artist and video essayist whose love for My Little Pony has led to some lovely art and some interesting discussions on their YouTube channel. Welcome to the podcast, GatorGoatJohnny!
I love your rattle, man. That I watch a lot of content creators that have a rattle that's very predictable, and there's something about it. I like that a lot.
Well, I appreciate that. I like to take the time to, really make it feel like more like a conversation than just like, hey, generic intro or whatnot. Like, if you ever watch like a late night show or whatnot, like obviously they're like rattling the stuff in or whatnot, or like a Saturday Night Live or whatnot. But it's just like part of the show essentially.
Yeah.
But regardless, thank you so much for being here, Johnny. How are you holding up today?
I'm doing really well. It's not quite so cold yet. So I still have, it's in that nice fall weather before it gets really, really chilly.
Oh no, trust me. I know exactly how that is, especially around here, because I'm in the South. I'm in Georgia. So like for me, winter or fall is always this like weird little area to where it's like you have the super hot summer, and then you have what I like to call faux fall, where you have like a week to where it just gets cold for all of a sudden, and then you get summer, like the last little stroke of summer, and then it slowly gets back to being like the truly cold temperatures of fall before it's just winter.
Oh, you guys do that too. We call it fake winter up here.
Basically, there you go.
Yeah, yeah.
But thank you so much once again for taking the time to do this. Whenever Tipsy introduced me to you, I was really quick to really take a quick deep dive into your stuff. And honestly, like I was really impressed with what I saw, and I cannot wait to discuss that and then some. But before we talk about what you do nowadays, I want to go back just a little bit and learn more or less the origin story of Johnny. What got you interested in art and animated stuff in the first place?
That's interesting. When I was in I want to get this right, the 10th grade, our teacher, our AP Lit teacher, she made us do what she called I can't even remember. It's called the Chaucer Project. We were reading, not Chaucer, excuse me. It might have been Chaucer. Anyway, there's a famous novel called Canterbury Tales that famously wasn't finished because the goal was to travel to a place and then to tell a bunch of basically an anthology. It was like a round. We're gonna tell stories about all these different characters on the way there. It had very much roots in like oral history, and so part of it was in order for the students to get a good grasp on what the anthology was. Excuse me. They had us do a frame narrative, and the characters, for whatever reason, would split off and do three different segments or different stories. And I did one for my crew. It's available online somewhere, called Ninjas at McDonald's. I was 16 and the only one who knew how to edit. I was 16. I was the only one that knew how to edit. And so they had we filmed something with terrible continuity errors. It was filmed on the way to a McDonald's, and then later there were some inserts we had to get. Really terrible homespun filmmaking, but when I recorded it, I think it was like on iMovie or whatever Windows free media player was available, and I kept receiving like an error. I had to basically prop up a camera on hockey pucks and like record my screen because we couldn't get it to render.
Mhm.
And that was good enough. And I think we got like a B on it. But there was a moment in that short where my character stabs another character, and I had this cheap knife thing, and the idea was that I was going to stab a person, but I couldn't really stab him. So
Right.
we did a match cut where it would cut straight to there, and it would cut to just some like red tinted water that we would throw in the grass, and I put it down there, and so we're playing these in the theater in our classroom, and it did the match cut, and I heard somebody in my class gasp, and I had never made a creative decision before that received that kind of a visceral reaction, and that was I really valued that. The next year I was out of that class, but the people that I was friends with, they were 1 year down, so I had to do theirs as well. We did a Clue parody. Um, I have I don't know how much of the latter
Okay,
you want.
okay, that's valid more than anything else. Where it leads me to wonder, like, especially having that like fun little vision based on that little project. Were you always a fan of like movies and shows and stuff like growing up? Like, what were some of the media that like influenced you up to this point?
I was a big fan of not parroting media, but I realized growing up I probably watched way too much television. I watched a ton of Cartoon Network.
Yes.
And there were some like format changes that really baffled me. I remember uh, in season 2 of Courage the Cowardly Dog, there's an episode entitled "The Tower of Doctor Jalost," and that was the first of Courage the Cowardly Dog's two 30-minute specials. Now I was used to watching things like Ed, Edd n Eddy or the Powerpuff Girls,
Right.
who would get an A story in 15 minutes and then do a B story in 15 minutes. So I was shocked to find out that there are stories that can be told in longer segments. I like things that make good use of the medium. I recently went back and watched some of the older like He-Man shorts or like the Gen 1 My Little Pony stuff,
Mm-hmm.
where they were not afraid to have a story take 10 episodes if it needed it. And so when you watch things like The Tower of Dr. Jalost or The Mask or any of PPG's specials, uh, it felt like an event. And I grew to become, as I was older, I became really, really cozy, buddy with the idea of an anthology. I like this, anything that will group a large number of creators together
Yep.
is something that it's very popcorn. It's very like comfort food to me.
Honestly, that's extremely valid, especially with some of those shows you were talking about, especially when they took the opportunity to have that like 30-minute special. It was an event. It was a big thing, like even if you didn't realize it. And that comfort food, honestly, that is the perfect description, because I grew up on that, like the similar kind, like that 90s 2000s like Cartoon Network and stuff like that, like the Ed, Edd n Eddy. I cannot tell you how much I quote Ed, Edd n Eddy to this day. I mean,
Right.
um when did it for you go from like this general love and appreciation, kind of realizing this is something you could be curious about with that project, to a passion and wanting to make it your career? When did you realize you wanted to like really devote yourself to media in one form or fashion?
I got married in 2016, and
Nice.
yeah. And so what it is I took 7 of the songs that my wife likes, and I got a really rudimentary Premiere Pro tutorial, and I basically stitched 7 songs together, and then in between, in the interstitials, there would be I recorded like her family and friends. I got like her aunt, excuse me, all her high school friends to say, hey, we're glad you're getting married, and then we went on like an early honeymoon to Chicago or something, and I played that thing in its entirety. It's like a 45-minute thing that I was still really proud of. But the important thing is, I also have a high school friend named Josh who wanted to be on the thank you messages, and I brought him over here, and I said, I think I want to be an editor because I go back the to discussions about how I enjoyed match cutting like that, and I enjoyed putting things together and on that level. And he said, "Wait, you want to be an editor? I'd like to be involved in Let's Plays." And he talked about it for a little bit, and for 4 years between 2017 and early 2020, he and I ran just the worst Let's Play channel. It's called It was called The Jester, but it was spelled. He told me he spelled it with the French spelling O-U-R because somebody had already taken Jester with an E-R,
Mm-hmm.
and we ran that for 4 years, and it. I don't think we ever cracked like 200 subs or something, but we I honed my chops on that, like having a Premiere Pro set up. Um, from that, it became a short-lived podcast that we ran called the Day After Podcast, where we would review any kind of just it was just filler content, and I got caught uh, around 2020. I was stuck in my house for obvious reasons, and my wife was catching up on My Little Pony, and I like, oh crap, I kind of really like this, and it became my first episode. Now, the Day After Ponycast, that began as a it began as just another episode of that show, and it kind of spiraled out of control mainly because of the musical element. I wanted to get as many people involved as possible.
Mm-hmm.
So that became the first episode there, and it's been really it's basically a hobby at this point. I know we talk about careers as like money making ventures.
Right.
I, but I'm not putting words in your mouth. It's just
With the Let's Play, I definitely can see that I burned myself out. It was a hobby that I took too seriously, and as I look at things, I really try not to fall in that hole a second time, because there's not a lot that feels worse than taking a hobby and burning yourself out on it.
Oh yeah, no. As someone that works an IRL job on top of trying to do his own creative venture and such, I totally get that mentality. Like with this podcast, like I try not to wear myself down with this kind of thing, because at the end of the day, like all I'm just doing is having a good casual conversation and just sharing it with the world and such.
Right.
Like don't get me wrong, I would kill to have this be my career at some point, like make this be the job that pays the bills or whatnot. But like I can also understand, especially with the Let's Play channel, especially at that time that you were talking about, like 2016, that was more or less like around the time, or at least the tail end of the time, when Let's Plays were king, more or less. And
Yeah, they were definitely very much in vogue, yeah.
Like everyone wanted to be, so I could see why that could be a fun little adventure to go on, and especially, depending on how the fun element could be with those Let's Plays or whatnot. Could start off seeming like fun, but I can also understand how it could quickly turn into feeling like a career and feeling like you're just burning out all your energy into something like that. Though I imagine there were still fun times with that. There must have been at least some. I mean, it was your buddy. It's not like,
No, yeah, and I would never have done it with anybody that I didn't go to high school with.
Exactly.
And when you meet that person, you go back and you become that person that you were with when you were in high school, because I hadn't seen him in a while. But, after that, he came to my bachelor party. He came to my wedding. He was one of my best men.
Mm-hmm.
But it helps a lot being with people that are interested with it in the same low stakes level that you are.
Absolutely. I'm almost curious, at least when it comes to the Jester Let's Plays or whatnot. I know how it is editing stuff like that, or at least editing, stuff to where it's supposed to come out like a certain way. Was there ever like a particular edit that you were particularly proud of with the Let's Play, like or with the Let's Play stuff?
We did a lot. A particular one edit. I would try. I was a big all of my Premiere Pro knowledge. Back when I used to watch Game Grumps, former member of Game Grumps, Barry Kramer, had just a rudimentary. Here's how I do J cuts, L cuts, and I took that really rough knowledge and I applied it to a Premiere Pro on a computer that definitely could not run Premiere Pro. I had to actually upgrade in the middle of it because it absolutely couldn't handle that.
Right.
I like the kind of tiny goofs. When you're editing and performing for a small group of people, I think probably 80% of the views are just my wife putting something on in the background, because we don't do that anymore, and she's aware of all these in jokes.
Right.
Sometimes I'll expand on those. But in a way that I know will make like my wife or my roommate laugh, and it's very freeing not to be going for a larger, more broad audience.
I can only imagine. Now, during that little discussion, you mentioned something that is honestly very key for kind of your identity to this point. You mentioned that your wife more or less got you interested in My Little Pony. Now, for anyone that may obviously know your content, I can imagine some of them might be surprised by that, but I'm curious, like, was that like your first ever exposure to My Little Pony and such, or like how familiar were you with My Little Pony before, you know, your wife introduced you to the Friendship is Magic and such?
There is a it comes across a couple of different ways. My earliest experience, I think, when we started dating, it was probably 2011, 2012 when we went to college together.
Okay.
And she knows me as that was the peak of my cinema snob phase. I had correct opinions about all kinds of cinema bro movies, and that I was very, very snobby. And admittedly, like I had opinions that were more correct than yours. We were in her we were in her room. We were in her room, kind of just chilling out, and she was watching what were at the time she was pirating what were at the time new episodes. It was a season 1 episode,
Right.
and there's a song entitled Art of the Dress where Rarity sings probably a 4-minute song about how important it is to, you know, all the steps involved in making a dress and making sure that she satisfies her friends' requests. And it played, and I was on my phone or something, and she looked at me and didn't get a response. And then she looked at me again, and I said, why are you looking at me? And she asked me, you know, I could have sworn you would get really, really mad about this being just a girly kind of sewing thing. And I think I actually yelled at her. I'm like, I can't get mad with stakes this low. It's a song about teaching kids how to sew, and I swore in there, but it's there's an effortless nature to it, and that didn't catch right away. One thing that I bring up because it's funny, it's partially a joke because I think I am currently a recovering alcoholic, and I quit drinking in February of 2021.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. I'm glad to hear that you quit and you've been able to stick with it for this long for the most part.
No, yeah, it helps, and I know the way my brain works. It helps to have something else on top of that. And I remember Haley was out, my wife was out doing something, and I received I was plastered out of my mind, and I said, Haley, I want to put something in front of my face. And she was catching up on some of the Equestria Girls movies that she had never watched before. So she was watching them in the background. And I said, I would like to turn some of those on. And I turned one of those on, and I think I still drank the rest of that night. But I told my wife when she got home, I was like, I kind of want to watch this for real. And it took us like 9 months to watch the whole series. And I drank during a lot of that. Thank goodness I had, you know, a roommate and a wife who were confident enough to say, hey, we were concerned about you. You have a problem. I have a very vivid memory. So the day I stopped drinking happened to be the same day that we recorded what became the Day After Ponycast, my first episode under this moniker. Mm-hmm. And I remember really vividly, I said, let's watch the show, because we get home from work. Let's watch the show. Let's go do the podcast, and then I can start drinking, because I believe in what this can become, and I've seen old Let's Play episodes where I'm really slurring around, and if I want this to be good, I should at least wait.
Right.
And I didn't realize until several weeks later that I like to joke at conventions that ponies cure my alcoholism. As long as you put a huge pin in that, because my mom was also a recovering alcoholic, so like
okay.
The big asterisk has to say, no, not really, but I know how that works, is that when I put something down, be it a substance or an activity, I need something else to pick back up, because I'm very fidgety. I like to, you know, jump wholeheartedly into things.
I totally understand that mentality. Again, you know, I also like to pull myself wholeheartedly into stuff, hence this podcast or whatnot. But one, like I said before, seriously, it's good to hear that, especially after all these years or whatnot, this has been a good substitute in a way, but like, yeah, but also like, it's good that even if it's not the full answer of what helped me recover, it's at least a good, what's the word I'm looking for? It's at least a good part of the process. Like, especially with,
right.
Sorry, go on.
No, you're correct. It's a good part of the process. It kept my mind off a lot of things, because it's very weird, because that day was, I didn't go into that day intending to stop drinking.
Right.
I just, for a couple of weeks, instead of, I would normally I would go home and be like, okay, let's start drinking. But then I'd be like, oh, we can watch some more of this show. And for several weeks in a row, I chose to watch the show instead of drinking. And by the time I was like, oh crap, I have 3 weeks under my belt. And by that point, I'm like, oh, let's just see how far we can take that.
I mean, hey, regardless is good to hear. It's impressive more than anything else, because I can only imagine, without the My Little Pony stuff, how hard it would have been to try to get off that stuff. What was it about the show, or at least about like the property as a whole? What was it about My Little Pony that you connected with it, that like spoke to you, that made you want to like sink so much into it?
I appreciate things that are made in earnest, and I know that as a creator, sarcasm and irony are tools that can be used like anything else. I appreciated the earnestness, because how did you get into it? Within the fandom is probably the number one most asked questions, both within and without the fandom.
Right.
And they constantly ask that question, and the answer that a lot of people like to give is, I watched it as a joke and realized, oh, this is kind of a very genuine show that is made in earnest. And it helps that its original incarnation creator, Lauren Faust, is married to Craig McCracken, who you might know as the creator of, okay, you've done your research, that's awesome. He's
I am very well versed in the lineage of this show, at least when it comes to like the creators and such. I mean, for those who don't know, Craig McCracken, legendary creator of, Powerpuff Girls, Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends. What was that one Netflix show that recently ended not too long ago? The name is
Craig McCracken. You're gonna hear me. You're gonna hear me typing. Just ignore me.
No, you're perfectly fine. But like, obviously, like, he is a legend when it comes to some of the cartoons that a lot of people grew up with and still watch to this day as well. So the fact that Lauren Faust is a not only married to this guy, but also a working member in the animation industry, working on so many legendary stuff, it lets you know that the show was in good hands.
It was definitely. It shocked me to find out that Lauren, when she started The Apprentice, she had like a layout role. Mm-hmm. She was not romantically involved with Craig at the start there.
Right.
So it's nice that what began as a professional relationship blossomed into something. You might be Kid Cosmic, maybe.
That's what it is. Yeah, Kid Cosmic. That's what I was thinking of.
Yeah. Doesn't ring a bell to me, but yeah, I knew he's done a bunch of different things.
Mm-hmm. I mean, again, without him, some of the cartoons that we may have grown up, that a lot of people grew up with, who knows where we'd be without them and such. But yeah, like, I can only imagine, especially like you said, whenever it's in the hands of someone trusted like that, for a show that was made so earnestly, I can easily see how someone like you, even though it started off as a joke, can easily connect to it and like appreciate what they were trying to go for.
Right, and I think I recognized sort of those chops when I think I was like 10 or 11 when the Powerpuff Girls movie came out in 2002 or 2003, yes. And I didn't have a car. I had to kind of push my mom to take me to that, and I don't think I ended up seeing it in theaters because my mom was not willing to take me to a cartoon show of that nature, and it ended up being a good time. But you did have to kind of push against that a little bit, but knowing Lauren's sensibilities, we recently, as part of that podcast that we were on for a few years, we would watch old shows that were important to us. We did Ed, Edd n Eddy by Danny Antonucci, and we did Lauren Faust and Craig McCracken's Powerpuff Girls. Also Gendy Tartakovsky, who did Samurai Jack and then later Primal. He's very, very talented individuals who you get to appreciate on a level beyond just Samurai Jack was on when I was 10 or when I was 12.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. I was gonna say, I actually recently got a chance to see Gendy Tartakovsky like in person for a film festival. It's one of those, my buddy had a film that was supposed to premiere at this film festival, but the schedule got messed up because of a hurricane that was coming through. But the day that I went, which I was supposed to see his movie, they had Gendy Tartakovsky as like a keynote speaker for the previous day that had gotten canceled. So I went to actually go see him talk in person and see like, some of the things that he had previously worked on, like, Dexter's Laboratory, Samurai Jack, Primal, and such. And like, like, see some of the first versions of some of this stuff, see some of the behind the scenes aspects of it, see some of the inspirations that lead into it. It was a really, really cool experience to like see him and have him talk through this stuff.
Oh, he's fantastic to listen to. Yeah.
Oh, I could listen and I could talk to him for ages on end. But again, like within that similar group of like the legendary, animation, creators, producers or whatnot that we kind of more or less know. And like I said, having a hand in a show that has a reputation among several different people, several different groups of people or whatnot, but obviously it has that like devoted love fan base to this day. I personally am still surprised, but also am not shocked with just how devoted people can be to My Little Pony and such.
Right. Definitely.
I mean, especially with how much love and care has seemingly gone into that kind of stuff. The like the lessons that still transcend no matter who's watching that show in one form or fashion. The fact that they keep it fresh and updated and stuff like that, because like obviously you got like the friendship is magic and such, the Equestria girls and that, and now we have like the new iteration, the 3D animated one that Netflix is having a hand in or whatnot. Like it's really cool to see that kind of stuff. I can imagine, especially for you, really immersing yourself in the world of My Little Pony. I can only imagine how much of a well-rounded experience it has to be for you to really like soak all this stuff in.
Right. Lore is not usually I appreciate it. It's not number one on my bucket list when I'm looking for information, but a lot of people who said they were attracted to it were attracted to world building. Mm-hmm. And if I had more time or more time to devote to other hobbies, people have recommended that one of the most famous games of the last 10 or 20 years that I've never played, Dark Souls.
Yep.
A lot of people have said they were attracted because of the way and in the manner in which lore of this world was distributed. I get the idea that they don't give it to you up front. They're like in item descriptions or in like town details. The way that it is provided to you feels really organic. And that if I were more interested in, being fluent or picking up another game, that's something that I think I would really respond positively to.
So what you're saying is My Little Ponies is the Dark Souls of cartoons. Got it.
Yeah, basically, 9 seasons. 9 seasons is, I think, more than a lot of cartoonists would ask for. I think.
Right.
Powerpuff Girls ran for 6, and that feels like a lot. Hey Arnold, we're watching currently, that ran for 100 episodes, but it's we've also been watching some shows that maybe finish their story or they get canned in the space of a season or two.
Yep.
And just the legacy of having the Dark Souls of animation, they get very, very lucky to run for that amount of time. And if I were Danny or if I were Craig, I could die a successful individual.
That is a valid mentality to have. Any of the ones that had that kind of like, again, like really interesting worlds and really like fun stories to tell at the end of the day. Like that's always an amazing thing. So obviously devoting yourself, like really investing yourself in a world like My Little Pony and all these different anime stuff is one thing. What made you want to turn around and like start making content on it? Or at least like what made you want to like really tell the world what you really thought about this kind of stuff?
So I'll admit that the Day After Ponycast from 2021, it came out the day that G5 began, and that was just a happy coincidence. Mm-hmm. I appreciated being able to, if everyone was going to provide their own stories about this is what spoke to me, this is what spoke to me. At panels, you constantly hear things like such and such appreciation panel. It can speak to any number of different things. And there are elements of this that I wanted to discuss. And it originally was just a summary of the show, because that's what the Day After podcast was. It was just a summary of the shows that we were watching. Mm-hmm. And one of the earliest episodes I found, because I've noticed what I'm about to discuss, I've noticed this in other shows that I watched that we've already mentioned from Cartoon Network. It is a TV trope entitled Early Installment Weirdness. And when a show is being made, they don't often right off the boat know what kind of tone they're going for. So they will change things.
They're still off the top of my. They're still trying to more or less like find their footing on what exactly how they want to tell the story in the first place.
Yeah, right. Like earlier episodes of Samurai Jack were a little funnier. Hey Arnold, in his first couple episodes, he was a little bit more of a space cadet. He was much more prone to just floating off in his own head. If you watch early episodes of Courage the Cowardly Dog, Courage talks way more. Same with Big Mac. They just the weight they give to dialogue or some other element of the story ahead of time, it'll change. And I think that as much as I love the fandom that I'm in right now, it can get trying to say this in the nicest way possible. People can get very protective over the nostalgia.
They can be very devoted to that fandom.
That's a really good way to put it. And I think that there are people who they don't know a lot about production, or they don't know a lot about a certain storytelling technique. It could be, this is a really good platform to tell people about. You may find it interesting why they have to write letters to Celestia at the end of every episode, or you may find it interesting, why this ran for 65 episodes, or why in the last 2 seasons we go to a school, even though it doesn't make sense. You can talk about those things, right. And I went to college. I have a math degree with a minor in economics, and 2 years into my 4-year career residency, or whatever it's called, somebody told me that with the demeanor you have, you would make a really good teacher, like an educator.
Okay.
So somebody told me you could be a math educator. I had a very, very formative math educator. My 8th grade teacher was Mr. Wingert. He taught me about algebra and all that, and I think he was very, very engaging. And a lot of my favorite YouTubers are really kind of just engaging, inviting people. And that is even though I didn't end up turning education into a career, it's something that is a skill set that comes easily. So when you can use this kind of world that everybody is invested in for different reasons to talk about cool stuff like that. So some of the best conversations I get is, wow, I never thought of it that way, or thank you for sharing an opinion. That's where it's the most rewarding.
I mean, I certainly get that more or less mentality as I'm like going through like some of your videos, or some of the video essays that you've put out there and such. Like, for example, one of the ones that like grabbed my attention immediately was like one dedicated to like how parrots exactly work in My Little Pony or whatnot.
Because it's like, that's actually. Go ahead.
No, you say your piece. You say your piece.
No, that actually turned out to be my favorite episode, because what I have a long list of just. Nobody's talked about this. Let's make an episode. Mm-hmm. It's interesting because I was 30, I think I was 32 when I wrote that. And it was a discussion of parents in the show, but as bookends, there were discussions about my parents and their relationship. Like, my mom couldn't care less, and my dad knows that I like it now, but he didn't at the time. And I told him I was going to Cider Fest. He accidentally let slip. We were at the diner, and he accidentally let slip, like, why the hell would anybody go to see one of those? And I think he could tell that I had shifted a little bit. Okay. And when your adult son has recently quit drinking, you'll just let him be involved in anything that he wants. But the important thing is that I got to engage with people. I asked people, my call to action near the end of the episode was, what is your relationship with his parents? And I think I spent about as much time actually making that episode as I did reading through probably 300 comments of people talking about their relationship with their parents and the media, because it is sometimes a tall order to explain to somebody why something with that demographic actually appeals to you. Mm-hmm. And getting to hear 300 like really authentic stories, people were more than happy to discuss that.
Oh yeah.
And that was like chicken soup for me. Emotionally, I ate good for weeks after that.
Well, I mean, to be fair, for a fandom like this, like, obviously it has its, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, it, people have their vision, they have their image in their head of like what that fandom is more or less like, of what this fandom is. But like at the end of the day, it's like I can imagine, especially for you, like it's this nice, cool, rewarding place where you guys love and appreciate a lot of the same, things that the show presents. And, yeah, everyone's not exactly going to get it. Not everyone's going to exactly understand why a show that was made for kids really speaks to adult males at this point. But at the same time, like, for some people, it's just, it connects on a different level for a lot of people, especially with what they're trying to say and such.
Definitely.
I mean, I can only imagine, and like, especially when you said like chicken soup, just reading through those different comments, like, especially well over 300. I can only imagine that is a fraction if you were able to get more of a reach. I mean, don't get me wrong, over 300,000 views on that video alone is impressive, is incredible. But like, if it somehow was able to reach even more people, I imagine you could probably have enough stories to last you like an entire year when it comes to this fandom.
Yeah, I go back and I read some of the older comments because they hit exactly the same as they did 8-10 months ago or whatever.
Exactly. I mean, I can easily see how an episode like that or a video like that can instantly connect with you. I mean, again, this is you telling your own story while also trying to discuss like how the parents in the show are exactly like and such, and like it gives me a good smile hearing how well that's kind of also helped you feel more comfortable in the fandom as well, because I can only imagine like especially when you first really decided to devote yourself into this versus where you are right now. Like, I can only imagine how much you feel like warm and embraced in this kind of community.
Yeah.
I mean, I can imagine for you, like, especially being in this community, how surprising is it for you, like, to feel as welcome as you do in the community with what you're able to present?
I was kind of shocked. I recently came back from Ponyville Cider Fest, which is my home convention. And by home convention, I don't mean that I live in the Milwaukee area. I just mean that it was my first convention. Mm-hmm. Geographically, it makes the most sense. It's an 8-hour drive. I partially because I said, what have I got to lose? And I put in for a community guest panel. And I was kind of shocked that I got it in the first place because a lot of people, the general attitude is a lot of really because it's a smaller fandom, it's more likely that a lot of people know each other and that they will get chosen repeatedly for some issues for community guest spots. And I was kind of, I knew that it sounds wrong to say pay your dues, but I feel like when you make stuff earnestly, it will catch on eventually.
Right.
A lot of people had said things after the fact that, I would have applied if I knew they were looking for new faces. And Charlie Worley, the convention chair, had said, I didn't say we were looking for new faces because I thought that was assumed we were always looking for new faces. And I think that if you're genuine about what you want to make, you can do that. And I was kind of shocked that applied in the first place. And I think that if you offer people the opportunity to provide their own opinion, I think people are more than happy to share that. And there just has to be that kind of person who offers that call to action and says, tell me about your favorite parents, or was there a rarity outfit you like best, or people are excited to share those things. And people, especially now that I'm 33, there are one going on 2 generations under me who want to provide opinions. There are people that I talk to who watch this for their whole childhood. I did not start the show did not come out until I was 18. I did not start watching it until I was 28, probably.
Right.
So their experience is a much different experience than mine, and that's kind of what I'm looking for in just community guest roles, is being able to offer people the opportunity to talk about the show and how it affected them instead of just being a show about, me.
No, absolutely. It's understandable, especially with like the topics you've been able to provide and the different videos you've been able to put out there and such. I'm curious for you. I know you said Paris is probably one of your favorites, if not the absolute favorites, but do you have any other personal favorite of your videos that you put out there that people can easily see that like you definitely put in the time and effort and love into talking about these subjects?
Yes. Let me pull open kind of my catalog. The one thing that I had in December of 2023, I have a 2.5-hour video entitled it just says ranking every episode.
Yep.
And I'm impressed by that because I think it's part of my autism masking. I like to just order things and catalog things, and what's interesting about that is that it's 2.5 hours. I usually that's an exception for me. One of my stickling points is I don't think something should be needlessly long, but I think for a show that ran probably 80 hours in length,
Yep.
it's okay for that one to be a little chunky, especially because I edited it start to finish. You can kind of, if you watch it start to finish, you can kind of see my production value incrementally get a little bit better. Because going back and looking at like my Let's Plays, the audio peaks, it's poorly balanced for the room I'm in.
Right.
Right. But it's nice that I put that together. Another one, I was curious as a fan. I keep finding stuff that I had never seen before, and so I was a math major, so I made that video that became another panel entitled "How Much Pony Is There?" I said, let's grab as much stuff as possible. Even though I know it's such a big franchise, there's so much stuff that I'm going to miss. And even in the video I said, as soon as this goes up, I know I'm going to miss something. And immediately that happens. Somebody said, you forgot this, you forgot that. And honestly, nobody likes being actually'd, but in that case, I really invite people to say, you forgot about this. Because if somebody says, I've never seen The World's Biggest Tea Party, and you tell them, what, you're such an idiot, you've never seen that? You deprive yourself the opportunity to show them World's Biggest Tea Party. And I ripped off that sentiment from an old XKCD comic about Diet Coke and Mentos. But everybody joins the fandom not knowing something.
Right.
And I want to be able to kind of show them this cool, weird thing. And that they can, it's a collaborative effort almost. They can say, you forgot this. And so when I redo that panel later, I can add all these extra things. And you never know what's going to get somebody, what they're not going to have seen before. If it's something super obvious or some really, really niche stuff that's not out there anymore.
I mean, to be fair, when you have as big of a world that, Celestia and all the places can be and all the different aspects of it, you're bound to miss something. Like in such a huge world where there's a lot of world building going into it, you're going to miss a thing or two. Like that's just guaranteed to happen. I was gonna jokingly ask which one was more difficult for you, ranking every single episode or parsing through all the different fan theories that people have about My Little Pony, seeing how that's like your most popular video.
No. So fan theories is interesting because I feel like mostly I did a good job. There are so many of them that when you have a game or a franchise that has a lot of world building, they're going to come out. And so I'll cast a big net and I'll say, what's your favorite? And then it'll come up and I'll discuss what I can, kind of talk about what works and what doesn't work. And that was interesting. Counting how much pony stuff there is, that's a little bit more technical work. It's a lot of make sure you can add everything. It felt a little checkboxy near the end, but fan theories was fun because people have their own ideas, and as long as you're not being hoity-toity about it, as long as you're not being dismissive, there's a lot of fun in talking about your favorite stuff. My all-time favorite sitcom ran from 2005 to 2014. It's called How I Met Your Mother.
Yep.
It just happened it was in their 4th season in high school. And it was being pitched by my buddy Craig in my Spanish class. He said, you should watch that. It's like it's a whodunit kind of aspect. And so for like the second half of the series, like 5 through 9, it is a very almost like an armchair detective thing. I also watch the Dutch and American versions of The Mole, which I don't know if I have to explain the premise of that. Basically, there's a group of people attempting to win money for a pot that will eventually go to one of them. However, production has secretly, before they began, selected one person to be the mole, and his or her job is secretly, oh, you're on board. Yeah, so his job secretly is going to be, I'm going to try to ruin or impede their progress as much as possible.
Yeah.
Isn't
that where Anderson Cooper like got one of his starts or whatnot, or wasn't he on that show or whatnot?
He was okay. So the show was invented by John de Mol, a Belgian. I want to say Belgian. Belgian or Dutch. I'm Dutch, but I mix it up. That show came to the States, and for the first 2 seasons, it was hosted by Anderson Cooper, and I showed it to my Anderson Cooper. I showed it to my politically minded guy. I think he was still doing like TV spots at the time, but he struck a good balance. I like to say, besides My Little Pony, reality TV is one of my I guess my special interests, and I think that a lot of shows, especially reality shows, they need to know how to strike that good balance, and My Little Pony did that, and Anderson Cooper did that as well, because he knew how to treat it with kind of like the spy-like seriousness, but if he wanted to goof off with a contestant or the situation warranted it, he had enough really good rapport that he could handle most any situation.
Exactly. I can only imagine, especially with, and like you said, that could easily be the same thing said when it comes to My Little Pony and such. Like, obviously, there's a lot of times where they can, goof around, have a fun time, just be a comedy. But there could also be the times where it can sit down and, like, talk about a serious subject, or, like, hey, have a heart-to-heart moment when it comes to, like, what the situation is presented and such. Let's see. Talking about all these different like videos that you've been able to put out and all the different aspects that you went into it leads me to ask a question that I probably should have asked a little sooner. But like, what is the process like for you developing one of these episodes or one of these video essays for you? Like, how do you go from like this random idea of like, this would be fun to explore, to a finished product that you put out there for the masses to enjoy?
Okay, I am a big sucker for high concept things that can be, for things whose premise can be explained in one sentence. So for example, I have an episode planned for next year that was going to be like a one-off, almost like a YouTube short. And it was just it was entitled Horsehair. It was just going to be, let's look at the characters and what does their hair say about them? What is their design? Like Twilight Sparkle has nice cut bangs, so she's very studious, or Misty's got her hair this way, Pinky's got her hair this way. And it started, and I realized pretty quick, you could make a full-size thing about that. It started as kind of like a joke, and I think there was enough stuff there to talk about that it became its own thing. I think Pony Parents began the same way. It was something that began as a one, like everybody has parents, in an attempt to reach out, but it became something bigger than I thought it was. Other times I feel like I can use somebody as an avenue to discuss something that's important to me. When I was in high school, I had a very, very embarrassing, edgy Chris Angel magic phase. I was very, very into doing card tricks.
Valid, understandable.
And Chris Angel was on A&E. No, was it A&E? I think it was A&E.
I feel like it was A&E. Didn't he also have like a special too on like ABC or something like that as well?
Something. Yeah, he has some specials like David Blaine style, but I was not a fan of Trixie right out the gate, and I don't think a lot of people were. And I think there's a charm there that made smarmy magician work, and there are a lot of people that people like to joke about, a lot of elements of that I like to joke about, such as she's a magician. If you go back and you watch Ghostbusters, she was a magician, and all she was doing was trying to peddle her act and get some money up to maybe get a hotel room or something, and all they did was dunk on her for trying to do her craft. And it talks about the difference between magic as an art form and magic as some otherworldly power that she possesses. And I reached out to like old essays by Penn and Teller about how part of magic is you agree that you want to be fooled.
Right.
And that it's those kinds of things where it's something you want to get off your chest, or something that you've been thinking about for a long time, that make those cool setup videos like that. Or the alcoholism video was made as just let me put in my 2 cents because I hear about it a lot, but I don't think there are a lot of recovering alcoholics in the fandom, so let me just provide that. Those are the ones that I think will make the best episodes, because I'm the most interested in what can be explored there.
Right, absolutely. Also leads me to ask as well, because I can imagine with some of the thought mentality, especially with some of the subject matter, some of it is just like easy to really tackle and really immerse yourself into. It makes me wonder what's been like the hardest video for you to make, whether it be because the subject matter is either a little touchy or hard to really dive into, or just because the research was way more complicated than you anticipated to be. Like, was there one video that, while you're proud of it and you're able to put it out there, was like, oh, my goodness, what did I get myself into researching this stuff?
That got way too big.
Yeah.
My wife, she's not a professional writer, but she writes because she likes it. And part of the writing promotion, part of the writing process is, if you have a character and she has an OC that lives in the before times, like several hundred years ago, and so she had to Google, like, back then, when were pockets invented? Can my character have pockets if it exists in this time? And those are the kinds of things where you will go on huge tangents. If I'm talking about, like, I did an episode on pit pedals because, like, a lot of people, it's an uphill battle talking to people about Gen 5 in general, but which is why you kind of have to find a little bit of a hook there. And a lot of people are, maybe repulsed isn't the right way, but people don't like feeling pandered is maybe the wrong word. People don't like feeling pandered to. And so I had to go look up, the shows that I watched, the shows that used to be catering towards me are long gone.
Right.
So I had to look up, like, I don't even know what kids are watching these days. So I had to look that up and go, okay, the Paw Patrol kid, he's got, if not a cell phone, he's got like a BlackBerry or something. And there are characters that are just assumed to have smartphones at that age. And that was an interesting thing to try to illustrate to people, because part of the unconscious repulsion to a character who is the smartphone character, the social media character, is that it's an indication that my generation is no longer the one being pandered to or being alluded to, because I did not get my first cell phone until I was a freshman in high school.
Right.
And it's just a different environment that can feel like creators are focusing on something that's not you anymore, and it's very easy to alienate people. So I had to find a way to maybe massage that topic in a way that wasn't super controversial or super
condescending,
in your face. Yeah, condescending is a really good word.
I can only imagine, especially with like all the different aspects, and obviously, like, times are changing, people do get older, and obviously, the creators that come in, like, they have their idea of who they're trying to get to watch the stuff or whatnot. So I can understand how that could be kind of a topic of, ooh, I don't want to like ruffle too many feathers, but like I still want to discuss this kind of stuff. I will also say, I didn't say this before, but whenever you're talking about the hair stuff and like what each person's hair or whatnot talks about, that, like their character or whatnot, I imagine that's probably gonna be an easy one when talking about the the Weird Al Yankovic pony cheese sandwich or whatnot. In fact, it's just like, what is this supposed to say? This is Weird Al. He's weird for a reason.
So there are surface things like, oh, let's just do an ink suit character of Weird Al. That'll be just what he looks like. But it just, every character I came up with, I had to put it on the back burner, because every character I came up with, I'm like, okay, why is Misty's hair like that? Or why is Rarity got the little two-tone thing going on? Somebody said, one of the fan theories you forgot was that idea of the different number of colors in a person's hair being tied to their magical ability. So Twilight has 3-toned hair, so she's quite talented at stuff. Meanwhile, Celestia's got 4-toned hair, and she's the whole ruler of Equestria. And I said, that's my mantra. Instead of being like, oh, I never heard of that, I'll be like, wow, I never heard of that. And there are so many ways, if you will give like a kind of a joke topic the time of day, it will begin paying dividends like that.
Oh yeah. No, it's always the joke conversations that kind of lead to like the serious discussion of like, well, if this means this, and what does that mean in the implications when it comes to how it involves in the series. I love that kind of banter at the end of the day. I love that kind of stuff.
We got caught. Yeah.
Sorry, you go ahead. You go ahead.
No, what it is I love things that seem easy on purpose and then come out later. There's a video I'm working on that won't be out probably until Black Friday or sometime later, but I brought a panel to Cider Fest entitled Popular Opinions, and what it was it wasn't it wasn't friendship ending decisions like, oh, Twilight should never have had any of that stuff. It was low stakes stuff like Applejack can juggle, or Starlight Glimmer has a blog. I showed them 60 of those answers, and I said, you check off which ones you personally in your heart believe in. You don't have to provide any opinion. Just tell me, like, in your gut what feels right. And I knew I had picked a correct question because I was starting fights in the panel. And one of the questions read, check if you agree with this. Fluttershy would be a big fan of Pokemon.
Okay.
Now, immediately, a lot of people were like, of course. But then somebody, you could see lights go off in people's heads. They're like, oh, that's pretty close to dogfighting.
Yeah.
Like there's an aggressiveness to that. It turns out 2/3 believe that Fluttershy would be a Pokemon fan. But there are like legendary nights are had in those stupid hypothetical late night discussions that you have. I like thrusting upon people.
It's certainly interesting to, like, again, it's cool to think about, like, some outside elements that are introduced into a world, like how would such and such like react to this kind of stuff. Like, honestly, that last one that you're talking about, I feel like Fluttershy would, but more like the daycare aspect of it, like just the caring and, like, raising a Pokemon, not the fighting each other to a tail end or whatnot.
So that's what I said. Like, Ash wants to fight Pokemon, but, like, Brock is a breeder, and he's around for, like, something like 200 episodes. Like, there are different. A lot of people could have interpreted it differently too. Like, is it Fluttershy enjoys Pokemon the franchise, or Fluttershy would enjoy Pokemon, like being around them, taking care of them, giving one away to Dash? They would there are interpretations about that question, and I think. Yeah, it is difficult, and I'm glad that people came with strong opinions, because that's what I'm here to do, is to get people excited about, stuff they like and being okay with talking about that. And the fact that I started fights means that I did a good job, which sounds wrong to say.
I can only imagine. I can also imagine that, like, for exposing yourself a lot to the series or whatnot, especially, like, really taking in, like, the world building, but also, like, the characters and, like, the designs and the styles and such. Is that why you also decided to step into more or less the art world itself and start really absorbing that kind of style into your own art, like with drawing and such?
Getting an art style is weird. I didn't have a tablet, I think, until late 2021. And when you draw, finding your own art style is the hardest part, because for a long time, that's the biggest thing for actual two-dimensional drawing, is that a lot of, with editing too, and any filmmaking that you do, your first stuff is just it's just gonna be crap. It's not gonna be good, and you have to push through it. And in 2022, I challenged myself, kind of in an effort to meet new fandom people, but also to improve my craft. I said, hey, give me your OC, and when I have spare time this year, I'm going to try to draw 100 people's OCs, and a lot of them are really, really rough sketches, but pushing through and doing 100 of those, you get to kind of learn what your style is. And when you talk about, processing something as trying to think of how I want to say this, when you're making something, finding your own voice is often the most time consuming bit. You don't land on something that feels like you for quite a while. And it's just embarrassing. Nobody likes looking at their old stuff, but it's part of hammering through, which is why you do a lot of stuff. It's like that the Let's Play we did. I think we did like probably about 700 episodes before we called it quits.
Okay.
And most of those are terrible. They're quite bad, but you're right. If you look at some of my other art, it's just imitating the show, because I know, kind of with aesthetics, they gave them large eyes for a reason. Even before I was a fan, I would look at posters for like the 2017 movie, and I noticed the horses, the designs, they have large eyes, of course, but also they're taller than they are long, which I found unusual. But it is a cartoon, and you understand why they gave them kind of those attractive proportions to begin with.
Right.
And I stuck with what I knew would look okay. And a lot of people do much grungier, grittier stuff, but that is a style that works for them.
I mean, like, there is no shame in obviously, like, absorbing from a media that you absolutely love and trying to not really mimic, but really go off of their art style into your own. I mean, that's how a lot of people really develop their own art style based on the media that they absorb. So I can imagine, especially for you, like really challenging yourself to really take these OCs or whatnot and do it, give it your own little spin. I mean, obviously it's a good source material to go for, especially for what a lot of the OCs probably were, which is ponies. So I can understand why that's like the go-to style more or less. But it's really cool to see that like this show has given such an impact that you want to like go forth and like exert yourself in all different forms of art, whether it be like the video essay stuff with the digital art form that you're really putting yourself into. And from what you were telling me in the more or less like preamble, like little sound check thing, it leads me to like wonder like what made you want to go forth and do like a reanimation project for one of the episodes.
I'm a huge fan of anthologies we discussed earlier. I had a very formative time in my life. I'm going to tell you the story about what made me want to be first a filmmaker and then a content creator in general.
Okay.
I was with two of my high school friends, Josh and Cody, and we were in line for a new movie that had come out. We were in the theater waiting for a movie to start called Pacific Rim. And
yes.
We were waiting in there. Yep. And my Cody was he's like, guys, I was on Netflix the other night. There's this movie you gotta watch. It's called The ABCs of Death. And
okay.
He's like, what it is they gave every director $5,000 stipend, and they said pull a letter out of the hat. You have to create a short film 5 minutes in length about death that begins with a certain letter of the alphabet. Mm-hmm. And they made 2 of these, but the first one is the inferior of the 2, but it's much less contained. There was definitely free reign. They gave no guidance or guidance points to the directors. And he begins describing, and I won't do it on the podcast, he starts describing the most messed up short in that entire movie. I'm like, you know what? I'll go do that. And the movie's a little over 2 hours because there's a lot of content in there, and there's a lot of content from creators like Nacho Vigalondo, the guy who did Colossal. They have the guy who did a Serbian movie. Ty West is in there, a very very old, very very young Ty West, and I appreciated that level of prompt. It's almost like a writing prompt. Like, here's the prompt, go do it.
Right.
And I enjoyed watching so many of those people do it that it's something that I wanted to tackle. One of my earliest videos, unfortunately, I was intoxicated and the half-finished project was on a portable hard drive that fell in the toilet, unfortunately. So RIP, we'll get to that later. It was ranking all 50, 54 or something of those shorts because I think there's a lot there, and I think these people do really good work, even if they didn't think so at the time. But you asked about the reanimated because I love those anthologies. I love let's see, what's the first anthology that comes to mind? There is maybe not quite an anthology. There's an episode of Ed, and Eddie where they're stuck in Johnny's wall, and they have to provide an explanation to Johnny as to why they're stuck in their wall, and so they're telling different portions of this story. But when Eddie tells the story, he's rich and his 2 friends are idiots.
Yep.
Or Ed is a monster movie. And those were cool exercises. And like Powerpuff Girls did it too. Samurai Jack did it a couple of times. I like bringing as many people on board as possible. And that love for anthologies for things like VHS or Southbound, horror as a film genre is very inviting to that. And I brought people up, and in hindsight, there are a lot of ways in which I wish the reanimated I had taken a little bit more time in the oven because I was way out of my element. I said, I want to make this because, and I especially wanted to make this because when I brought the topic up, a lot of people were like, oh, somebody so-and-so tried that a couple years ago and it never got off the ground. I'm like, well, let's get that off the ground. That's really, really cool. And so I paid out of pocket. And because I'm the only one paying right now, we're trickling that out. We have a couple of animators left. But it was there was another one of those heartwarming moments where I was slowly inviting people to the to the private Discord to talk about that, and there were people that I grew up on being huge fans of, like Fefaru. I was a huge fan. Brittany, Maka, I was all big fans of their work. But as I dropped people into the chat, all of them collectively were doing the Spider-Man meme thing. We're like, oh, you person, I really like your stuff. And it was just a really warm atmosphere of people thinking that they weren't like quote unquote horse famous, but there were people who they respected who also really liked their work. And I love that atmosphere, and I want to keep doing that.
No, that's honestly like really, it's really cool to hear that like just even getting these people together already generated a lot of excitement for this project.
It's exciting. People have been. I'm at the worst part of the project, which is like emotionally we've had that rough cut premiere at Ciderfest that received. It was positive received, but now it actually has to get out the door, and there are a couple like logistics things left. And I'm like, just maybe get it off my plate so I can do it again. I wanna check off all the boxes that need to be checked off so I can put it off my plate and start focusing on other things, because I had to turn a lot of people away. I was not at all ready for how many people were actually going to express interest in that. So there are people that I will be reaching out to that I had to close the door. And part of the reason that I chose Tell Your Tale in the first place is because if I was going to pay out of pocket, I wanted a shorter episode that would, because doing a full episode with the fees that I wanted to pay people what they're worth.
Right.
Doing a full episode of Friendship is Magic was prohibitively expensive, and now that I know that it works, we're talking about. Now that I know that it works, we're discussing kind of like, I don't want to set up a Patreon because I don't believe in making your hobby your job, because I fell into that hole before. But if we made a Patreon, it would be something of the form, 100% of what you give back is going to go back into projects like this. I want to make them. Money is literally the only thing in the way right now.
Right.
And I'm going to shout out Cole Donnerstock. He did a very nice, very lengthy part 1 pony music video entitled The Journey Once More. And he said, I love this. I love doing it. I have this whole roadmap of where I want the story to go, but I have a full-time job and like bills got to get paid. So it's some now that the groundwork has been laid, I think we can start adding some infrastructure in there to do larger things. There are a lot of like kind of self-indulgent things that I want to do as well. Like I'm a big fan of there's a horror short franchise out there called VHS.
Yep.
It is basically it's an avenue for probably 5 horror shorts. So it's not quite the 26 of the alphabet, but I would like to do that with some kind of variety of like user submitted creepypasta or something, because I feel like when I joined the fandom, I kind of strayed away a little bit from the creepypasta because it was easy to become kind of cynical about that.
Right.
But I also am a huge fan of horror stuff, so I'm like, if there's an avenue to do that, I would love to do that. And any excuse to get as many people involved as possible is kind of my end goal to begin with.
I mean, especially with the creativity that like some of the creepypastas do come in with. Like, obviously, there's a certain level of like disbelief or a certain amount of separation you have to have for some of that kind of stuff. But regardless, like some of the creativity that people put into those kind of creepypastas, I can see why you'd be interested in maybe going down that avenue and exploring like what could be expressed through there.
Yeah.
Like it leads me to ultimately ask, like, at the end of the day, like, thinking about all these different aspects that you've been able to have, especially since you've really immersed yourself in the pony fandom, but even taking a step back to, like, your entire, like, content creation journey that we want to talk about so far. Are you more or less amazed with kind of the reception you've been able to have, especially as of late, really getting the chance to express yourself and having this nice little community really coming forth and showing that love and support for these, for these opinions that you take a lot of time and effort and love into?
I am extremely fortunate to have people who have responded positively to that. There, especially in the early stages, there were a couple of people who were like, you need more traction than you have. And that's something that I'm like, oh shucks, don't talk about that. But having people that feel like they can listen to somebody talk earnestly about something, because that's often, especially for like younger folks, there are people that don't feel like they can talk earnestly about something about a franchise with this baggage is the wrong term, but it comes with a certain preconceived notion. And if people can talk about that and if people have an avenue to talk freely about that, that is something that helps everybody kind of feel a little bit more at ease in liking what they like. Because I grew up like pretending to like other things, and being able to just be open about stuff is extremely satisfying to my mental health, and something I want to, push onto, others so that they can enjoy themselves a little more.
Absolutely. Like it, I mean, that's honestly a good mentality to have when it comes to this kind of stuff. But even taking one more step back and thinking back to your art journey as a whole, thinking back to some of the Cartoon Network shows you used to watch growing up, to getting that first opportunity to really mess with editing and really want to immerse yourself in that world, to seeing where you are right now, getting the chance to create and edit and present such incredible ideas and thought-provoking stuff for a fun series at the end of the day. Thinking to your art journey as a whole, does it more or less surprise you how much you've been able to develop as an artist in one form or fashion?
It helps that I was able to try a couple of different things. So I began doing class projects, and I eventually did a Let's Play, and then I did a podcast, and now I'm just a content creator. We skipped a step there. And that step was in 2014 to 2015, we have a local short film program. And at the time I wanted to make short films, or I wanted to be involved in the writing process.
Right.
And so I got to do, with the other projects, I got to do things that I knew I was already kind of adept at, and I like doing, like editing. I get to sit in a room and I get to work on stuff, and I don't really have to talk to a lot of people. With Let's Plays, there was not a structure to it. It was very improvisational. I like, with the short films, I made 2 of them. Neither of them were accepted because I was so green at the time. Yeah. One of the requirements was you have to submit your finished short film in 1080p, and I was not aware at the time that due to the graphics or the SD card I had, it couldn't write fast enough to be saving 1080p, so I had to film it in 720. And I also found out that as a director, I it's just the kind of person I am. I really, really hate directing my own material. And what I like the most about each step of the journey is it got to tell me, I like this, I kind of like that, I really, really don't like doing that. Because I directed 2 short films, and I didn't have any camera. It was just me. So I had to tell people, do this or do that. And I really don't like directing people. I don't like having a control over a lot of people. What worked about the Reanimated is that I feel like after having 2 terrible short film festival submissions, I found a good middle point where I can tell people, here's what I want, but I have left the door pretty much wide open so that you can do whatever you want. I don't like giving direction, and that's just a me personal thing. But each step that I took gave me an understanding of what I like and what I don't like. Because you can tell somebody, I want to be in the entertainment industry, but that's almost like unhelpfully vague. Like,
yeah.
do you want to edit? Do you want to be an actor? And those people often don't work. It's like a village production, and you don't know what's gonna fit. And I like that. However I stumbled through it, each time was at least me checking off, I don't like that, or I like parts of this, but this was not working for me.
Right. No, trust me. You said that, like, I hate directing, like, my own stuff, and I cannot tell you how much I relate to that, because I went to school for filmmaking, like, for mass media.
Oh, I'm
so, like,
sorry.
It's a TV, film, all that kind of jazz. And, like, I've had mild success because of my kind of stuff. Like, my stuff, I've been able to go to a few film festivals because of that kind of stuff. In fact, I'll see if I can turn my camera very carefully, but I got a couple of posters over here of some of the films I was able to do, Perfect and Shifted and whatnot. But, like, but like I also get that mentality of like, you know, like with what you were talking about, like, yeah, you have a vision for it, but you also leave just enough wiggle room to where, like, if someone wants to improvise or someone wants to add this little detail or like add their own little bit of flair to it, like, it's there. You're not holding them back. You're letting them like express their own vision while also like keeping the mentality of what should be the end product at the end of the day.
Right.
I cannot tell you how hard I relate to that, because like whenever I did like my scripts for those films or whatnot, like I had like the general dialogue in there, like the general direction, but I was also like, let's add a little bit of like realness to it, because I will admit I wrote a little stiffly, like when it comes to that kind of stuff. So it's like, if you have something that's like, you know, feels more natural to say with this kind of stuff, or if you have like a little emotion, like go for that, like do that kind of thing or whatnot, because I wanted a good natural flow with like what I was presenting, like the Shifted film. It was a short film about a person that just randomly gets the ability to start shape shifting. Like she picks up a cactus that's randomly in the middle of the road, and like gets it out of the road, turns around because a car honk, turns back around. There's a person sitting right in front of her, being like, "Thank you for releasing me, and for that I shall gift you my gifts as well." And then boom, she can just learn how to shapeshift, but she doesn't know how to do it. Because it's not like straightforward, like, make me a dog. No, it's like you have to think of the descriptions or whatnot. Like, God, I don't want to deal with this prick. And then all of a sudden you're a cactus.
Oh, yeah. It's hard. It's really hard looking at self-examination is real hard. With like script writing, I like to think like I'm an okay writer, but I once, it clicked for me that I have this, if I have one like writing thing I need to work on, it's run on sentences. I often will not put punctuation where I need to. Things can be broken up instead of long rambling thoughts, because that's what I do. But when you notice that, or when you notice that you like a particular word, suddenly you're extremely self-conscious about that, and you want to avoid using a turn of phrase that you're very well known for.
Yep. I think my issue for me is that I put way too many swear words in like the first draft, and like,
yeah.
I always had the mentality like the first draft was the best draft, instead of going through at least a good couple of other times and like, okay, we can edit this part out, we can shorten this, like that, you know.
Yep.
But you know, we've talked a lot about like all the cool ideas and the cool projects you've been able to present and the cool things that you've been able to do. But for this next question, if I may, Johnny, I want to know more or less, I want to give you more or less the dream scenario, if I may. Let's say I am Big Shot Mr. Moneybags. I come up to him like, look, Johnny, we've seen what you've been able to present. It is absolutely phenomenal. We can see the love and dedication that you have for this kind of stuff. And we know that there's something there. You just need a little extra push, a little extra platform to get you to that point. We have access to everyone and anyone in whatever industry possible, and more money than there should be possible. We really should be compensating the animators, because in fact they're currently negotiating to get all the, you know, the rights and stuff. You know, make sure they can get like healthcare and they can actually pay for a place to live. Hashtag stay with animation. But right now we are focusing on you and you alone. If given this opportunity, what would be the dream GatorGoatJohnny project?
Okay. When part of how I grew as a creator was at first imitating a lot of people that I watch. Like, if you watch, let me see, actually. Do you mean project under this label specifically, or just any sort of creative project?
Any sort of creative project you want to bring to reality.
Okay. I don't get a lot of opportunities to talk about it. This is maybe beyond my depth, but I'm a big fan of reality television.
Okay.
So I grew up watching a ton of Survivor. I also watched like Fear Factor. I watched The Amazing Race. So I have these opinions about both the editing styles and the tone styles, about what is considered often a really kind of a trashy subgenre at times. And I think that there are other markets that will tackle things with a different lens. For example, Anderson Cooper was a part of the first 2 seasons of The American Mole, and The American Mole is fine, but there is kind of an inherent, I don't know, flippancy about it. That it's often dismissed as kind of junk food, and I'm not saying it's high art, but if you could find a place for it, I found somebody who streams the Dutch version of The Mole. It's been on for probably 20 years.
Okay.
And one thing that you notice is that my roommate Mike, he calls it prestige reality TV. This idea that something, even though it takes an unscripted format, can still be edited with the gravitas.
Oh yeah.
Maybe not the gravitas that it needs, but a gravitas in general. I like to say that one of the biggest problems that early reality shows had is that they really, really struggled to get a tone. So here's an example. My wife and I, we just finished watching a show on Fox called Crime Scene Kitchen, where people are tasked with going into a room where something has been baked, and they have to use clues to determine what needs to be baked. Now, if that were too serious, I feel like it would be like taking a pin and poking all the air and deflating it, because with something as all access and kind of warm and light as a baking show, you can't treat it with that level of self-seriousness that was often involved with a lot of reality TV shows. For example, the host they got is TV's Joel McHale. He's I think he's pushing like 50, but he knows, or he was given direction, that this is going to be an extremely lighthearted show. That we were not going to cast villains. It was going to be a show about cooking, so we were going to keep it nice and light. And Joel McHale knew how to keep that light. The production was kept in a way that it maintained that sense of tone. In contrast, there was a 2-season show that ran on, I don't know what, maybe Spike TV. I can't remember. It's a 2-season like an obstacle course / voting show called Dog Eat Dog. And one of the problems with that was that for how campy an obstacle course show was, it was treated with a lot of really almost uptight gravitas. Like whether or not you could crawl over a net was going to be the end all be all. Another example was Fear Factor ran for 6 seasons between 2000 and 2006. And Joe Rogan, for all his faults currently, he has spoken at length about the fact that part of the reason he got that job is because the way that he hosted it, the interview that he gave, the audition he gave was that he treated it like a joke. And by that, what I mean is he understood that there was a degree of chaos, like as much as you want to ask yourself, to what degree can somebody eat bugs? They knew this was a little bit of a kind of a trashy show to begin with. And the fact that he was able to banter instead of being very, very self-serious about it, I think that's what deflated a lot of shows in at least in the Land Rush era, where shows were coming on and they wanted to imitate a style that they recognized but didn't know why it worked. Right. And I don't know what the premise would be. I think there are a couple shows that could be these kinds of high concept shows that I like. I want to pitch something that really knows the kind of tone that it's going for. I wouldn't call Crime Scene Kitchen the perfect show. I think it has a little bit of room to grow, but it absolutely nailed that tone. And tone is one of those things, even when you're watching a movie, even if you can't quite grasp why this isn't working, that tone is going to set your expectations. And I think that if when the writer's strike recently,
yep.
There was a writer's strike very recently, but back in 2007, I was in high school and there was a writer's strike. And one of the first things they did, they had to cut short seasons of shows like Heroes, Journeyman, How I Met Your Mother, and they had to pivot to extra seasons of reality shows because they are cheaply made. And I want to remind the market that if you're willing to inject a little bit more capital into that, you can make a show with a really coherent identity. Survivor has been going on for 40 seasons now, 47 coming up on a 50, but you could tell, at least in the first 20, that after about China, they said, okay, we need you to make the same show on 90% of the budget. And then they would do that again the next year. They'd say, we need you to make the same show on a smaller budget. It seems like the market is beginning to become something interesting that can be made if we are willing to kind of reset the at least the American understanding of what that genre can be. There are a lot of interesting stories that if you are given the some kind of guidance about what makes good tone, I think there's a lot of stories that can be made that maybe in the financial climate right now don't make a lot of sense. I think with a certain injection of some more capital and some direction, you can make some really interesting stories there.
Oh, absolutely. I was going to say, like, for the long and the short of that discussion, like, honestly, I totally agree with that kind of stuff. It's similar to, like, how the industry views, like, game shows and stuff, considering the fact that the two are fairly closely intertwined with, like, similar concepts.
Definitely.
Just depending on, like how campy it needs to be or how serious it needs to be. Like, if you're going to go into something, like, you need to understand what the tone is supposed to be in the first place. Like what you were talking about with Crime Scene Kitchen. Like, yeah, Joel McHale knows how to keep it silly and campy because it's like you're putting detective work into kitchen. Like,
it's inherently a silly idea.
Yeah, it's apparently a silly idea. Meanwhile, you got Survivor, where it's like people are potentially risking life and limb to live in a deserted, remote area to see if they could survive, especially among like groups of people or whatnot. Like, you could be a little silly with that, but again, you're risking. You could risk life and limb for that kind of stuff.
Yeah, you need to be a little bit more serious.
It reminds me of another reality show that I don't know if you remember. It was like someone decided to take Gilligan's Island and make that a reality show for like one season.
Nobody talks about that.
Yeah, okay.
Nobody talks about. You're the first person who's talked about that to me. I think ever.
But like,
what year did that come out?
I want to say it was someone that.
I'm googling it. Keep talking.
I want to say it was like mid to late 2000s, like 2005, 2008, somewhere in that range. But it's like
I think it aired on like Nick at Night or something.
No, it aired on TBS if I remember correctly, or at least I remember it airing on TBS. Yeah,
The Real Gilligan's Island is a reality show that aired 2 seasons on TBS in 2004 and 2005.
See?
Oh my god!
And like, see, here's the thing with that. Like, if you watch the Gilligan Island TV show, like, it's a silly little concept. It's just a bunch of people that get stranded on a boat and like the silly adventures of a sitcom style thing. Meanwhile, they were basically treating it on the reality show like it was supposed to be the new Survivor in a way, like with like having people dressed up as the silly characters or whatnot. And like, yeah, there's some laughing tones, but it's also like we're gonna put you in these little scenarios that are very similar to Gilligan's Island. Let's see if you could actually survive with that kind of stuff or whatnot.
Oh my god, yes.
So like that it goes very well in tone with like what you're talking about. If they treat it a little bit more lightheartedly or whatnot, Lord knows how many seasons it could have lasted past the 2 that it did or whatnot.
Go ahead.
No, you say your piece. You go for it.
So I'm just interested because The Apprentice had this issue as well. Is that with Gilligan's Island? I was born in 1991. I don't know what the heck Gilligan's Island is. So they have. That's such a wild premise. It's just tangentially related to this 60s or 70s show. I don't know how that got sold. I don't know if TBS had some extra money laying around, but if it had like a Joel McHale style host and it was a little goofier, I think people could really have leaned into the idea that this is just a silly concept. And even Crime Scene Kitchen did that. They knew this idea was a little dumb to begin with, but they leaned into it. Mm-hmm. Oh my god, I'm kind of mad that you reminded me that exists.
I'm sorry for bringing up Vietnam flashbacks or whatnot.
Basically.
Hey, look, I know my reality TV shows as well. Okay, I watched some good classic stuff growing up, and I watched I enjoy my good bit of trash TV, but kind of like what you were emphasizing, it's not so much that whether or not it is trash TV, it's how it's presented in a certain way. One of the biggest reality TV shows I can think of is like Big Brother, and like they know when to treat it lightheartedly and they know when to treat it seriously, because at the end of the day, it's basically just like 10, however many random people inside a space, like doing silly challenges, but also like there's the chance for like backstabbing and betrayal and all that kind of stuff.
Now, I think that Big Brother before I move on to Big Brother, I need you to know that the theme song to the Gilligan's Island show was done by pop punk band Bowling for Soup.
Yeah, I remember. I remember that.
I didn't realize that till just now. If you go back, it's hard to go back because the first season of Big Brother is a bad show, and it's a bad show because the first season. It's called Big Brother because Big Brother is a term lifted from George Orwell's novel 1984.
Right.
And back then, it was treated with a very intense self-seriousness that this was a big Truman Show style experiment, that there were people here and you could watch them at all times. Mm-hmm. And the like web streaming was in its infancy, so they found a way to make this work. But there were no challenges. It was basically, we're going to capture what happened. It was much more pure. It was, we're going to capture, for better or worse, what happens here. And then at the end, at the end of every cycle, the people watching the show can vote on who they want to be removed. However, removing all agency from that results in an extremely boring show. And I think that beginning in I jumped on to like season 5 or something, but beginning with season 3, they realized we can't just film what happens here, because now that we know that we're watching them, that was the original hook, and now that that's gone, we need to do something else. And I think that when Big Brother was at its most fun was when it was that kind of trashy, maybe a little bit lighthearted, but treating it with the sincerity of some big social experiment. I'm not disrespecting people's tastes of the early 2000s, but that's what we were into. But knowing now, I think they know now that it's a little bit more fun, relaxed to show. I don't have time for it anymore, but I understand. I think they nailed, about the time that I jumped on, they nailed where that line is. But it was a big mess in the first probably 2-3 seasons before they figured out where they were going.
I mean, there's no reason to trash any of the early stuff, but obviously, like, it wouldn't last this long if it didn't eventually, like, correct course and understand more or less what it was and how it wanted to present itself. So I can understand, especially for you, like, you know, having that kind of love for stuff and really getting an opportunity to present an idea like that, to see if people can get on with that high concept reality show or whatnot. I think it'd be really fun, especially knowing the extensive knowledge you have about reality shows and such.
I think you can pinpoint how serious it needs to be.
Yes.
I think we're doing okay. There were a lot of misses. There is a I think it's online somewhere. If you're willing to hurt yourself a little bit, that one of the worst reality shows I've ever seen aired on Sci-Fi. I can't remember the time. It's a show that aired entitled Mad House, and the point of it is it was pitched as a group of people who want to expand their boundaries and try different things. Now, that was what it was pitched as, but they got 5 alternative lifestyle people to be the coaches. So they had people like a nudist or a body modifier or a Wiccan or David Henry, professional vampire. And that line is so hokey that we have a vampire and a Wiccan and a body modifier and a nudist to do this thing. The structure was so poor, but they continued to insist that this was a coming of age journey, that this was like, this is how well you can put yourself outside your comfort zone. And I don't think they ever realized that's what they were going for. And it is so bad that it's good. If you do have 6 or 7 free hours, it's an astonishing trash fire. But that's the pinnacle of a show that didn't quite understand what it was.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh goodness. We could have a whole another episode of the podcast just dedicated to just talking about the different reality shows that were out there. I can only imagine. I'll tell you what, bring me onto your channel at some point and just have an episode dedicated. Let's just talk about random. I know this isn't my normal content, but let's just talk about trash reality TV, people. I'm
excited. I set a second separate channel up in case I want to do stuff that's not horse stuff. And part of advertising yourself as a horse content creator is that the people that come for horse stuff, they may not be interested in an hour-long talk about reality shows. And the people that are here for normal content, sometimes My Little Pony is a bit of a hard sell. So it's nice to have that second set to keep things separate. I don't have anything up there now, but it'll be nice to just, if I want to talk about something else, to throw it up there, because there are whole arenas that you can gush in that just need to be separated a little bit.
Well, there you go. If the opportunity arises and you want to talk about trash reality TV, bring me. I got you covered.
I like that. I'll put you on speed now.
But sadly, we gotta get down from the dream scenario. We gotta get back to reality, and I'll ask the ever so generic question: where do you hope to see yourself in, say, 5 to 10 years from now?
I'm still here. I'm just thinking.
Okay. I wanted to make sure. I was scared for a half a second there.
No, you're good. You're good. I talk too much. I'm gonna try to like give it a second here. Okay. 5 to 10. You're right. That is a terribly generic question.
Yeah, it is. That's why I at least spice up a little bit with saying hope to see yourself.
No, yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. I want to build up that repertoire because a lot. I'm still here. I'd like to still be making a lot of the stuff. We talked a lot about the stuff that is prohibitively expensive to make, short films, pony related content of that matter. I think that there are any number of large things that if you had a big enough fan base is the wrong word, but if you had a big enough free time to have that sort of catalog that people know that whatever you're working on is going to be something that they're interested in tuning into, because right now I'm sitting at like 30 videos, I think. And you could tell in the analytics that people will come, they'll watch some other pony stuff, but if you don't have that backlog, like they'll watch your stuff and then be done. I have some of my favorite YouTubers of all time. They only have like 4 or 5 videos.
Right.
I would like to continue making things like this. I have a Google Doc full of probably something like 100 ideas. A lot of them are garbage, but a lot of them are just, what if we could do this sometime down the road? And I have everything I need, but like money and time. And a lot of these can only come out one at a time. So I need to put something on the back burner. I think that I could be doing this for probably the better part of a decade. I know I'm green when it comes to fandom stuff, but I want to be able to increase that awareness. And I don't want to say I want to be big or whatever, but I'd like to continue making this interesting stuff that people know me for, because I found something that is comfortable to do that I can also do because I have a day job too. I have a 9 to 5.
Right.
And for the first time in a while, I've struck a good balance. I think I'm in a better place than I was at any point during my 20s, and I'd like to just kind of ride that wave if I can.
Well, there you go. At the end of the day, it sounds like all you just want to at least aspire for is just more of what you currently have, but like, being more comfortable with it. And I mean, like, if that's all you want at the end of the day, who are we to argue at the that's something I had to kind of sell my dad on, because my dad, he was born in 1966. He was from a different climate. He says, "John, what do you want to do for a living?" I'm like, I don't really care. I want something that's going to pay the bills and allow me the maximum amount of free time to talk about Trixie. And I just am in a better place now than I was for most of the 2010s, which is something that I'm going to knock on wood and continue to ride that wave as long as I can, because I had a lot of mental health issues related to both alcoholism and anxiety issues that are now under control. And now that I have that under control, I want to try to start pumping stuff out as best I can now that I'm in a good place. I mean, even just us talking, like what you've been able to accomplish with this avenue with the GatorGoatJohnny, stuff, what you've been able to do within the past 5 years, like where you were 5 years ago compared to where you are now, is leaps and bounds completely different from where you were back then. And like, if it's anywhere to go but up from here for the next 5, 10, 15, Lord knows however many years from then on out, that should be a good thing to aspire for at the end of the day.
I'm very excited. Yeah, it's nice to no news is good news, and it's nice to not have any news right now.
There you go. As we start to wind down the interview, I just have one last question I want to ask you. Obviously, you are deeply entrenched in art and media in one form or fashion, whether it be the cartoons that you grew up consuming to really devoting yourself to filmmaking and editing, content creation to where you are right now. How important is art, not just for you, but for the world as a whole?
During my edgy high school phase, I wish I could remember the webcomic. I read more webcomics when I was in high school, maybe not so much anymore, but there was one very broody webcomic that would talk in like 3 image panels with like almost like typed out font, and one of them that really stuck with me said it's very poetic. It's not quite a comedic I'm gonna give you the name after this interview, but it wasn't quite a comedic webcomic. It was more like a mood piece, and one of them that really stuck with me said, "All right, guys, we with one simple pill we cured unhappiness and art." And I had never thought about that. If you Google it, it'll come up. But if we are complacent with something, we're not interested in things. I've met my fair share of people that will look at a piece of art that is made and ask kind of why it exists. I'm really, really happy that you gave a shout out to Stand for Animation earlier, because right now there's a lot of people, there's this AI movement about producing art, and I think that it gets a lot of things backwards. That automation was intended to make our day jobs easier so that we could spend more time thinking about Gilligan's Island, the reality show, and not the other way around. There seem to be some forces at work that are of the opinion that if you use automation, you can get out so much more art. It'll do the art for you, and it's so backward. It's really frustrating in this climate, and I hope that if I look back on this in a year, that the climate will have improved. But a lot of people it hasn't clicked for them, and that part of the human experience is creating art, and that it should not be the thing that is automated. That should be for setting aside things lower on the Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs, that can get taken care of, so that we can actually make these cool and dumb things that we want to experience. And now that I've said that, it comes across as kind of a cliche answer, but when I was picking up Mike, we had a whole 15 minutes where we were ranting about current AI uses. At the time this was recording, Coca-Cola, they said we generated 90 minutes of AI footage for which we took the best 15 seconds and put it into an advertisement.
Oh my goodness! Yeah, don't remind me of that.
That's extremely frustrating.
Considering the fact that like how iconic Coca-Cola commercials are, like throughout the time that Coca-Cola has been advertising, and yet here they are going with the AI option. Like, why?
It really sucks, because they say there's no ethical consumption under capitalism, and to take that just to down a peg is like, I can't stop drinking Coca-Cola. Do you know how many things they own?
Oh yeah.
Even one of the best movies I saw of last year, the horror movie, David Dastmalchian's horror movie, Late Night with the Devil, great movie, but there were interstitials. Even if it was just one like little painting interstitials that were AI generated, and I will give them the benefit of the doubt. Like that, back then when it was produced, we maybe had less of a grasp on how harmful it was to the industry. But when I see things like that, it's not just the bad art that I can dismiss because it has AI. There's also, it's beginning to creep into some of my favorite things, and it's frustrating because I like to vote with my eyeballs, and if something that I enjoy is doing that, I don't want to vote for things that are going to perpetuate that, and it's getting a little harder each time, but you got to keep the fight up where you can, which is why I appreciate that shout out.
Absolutely, and I think to what you said, in my opinion, that is wonderfully worded, as cliche it may be, is wonderfully worded, if I do say so myself. That is all the questions that I really have for you, Johnny. I've already showered you with a whole bunch of praise, but I'm going to shower you with a little bit more because it's my podcast. I do what I want. No, but whenever Tipsy first introduced me to you, I was instantly amazed with just kind of the love and dedication you seem to have for the subject of My Little Pony in general, seeing what you've been able to produce out there, but really getting the chance to talk to you right now and really understand kind of the journey that you have, how much this really does mean to you, how much like media and arts as a whole has really helped out with you on several different aspects. Like, I have a new love and respect for what you're doing, Johnny. I mean, I cannot tell you like how much I respect what you're able to do. Like, I will be upfront and honest. My Little Ponies is not really a subject that intrigues me as much. I give it all the love and respect in the world, regardless. I'm not gonna trash on it like some people do or whatnot. But like, I know that there's something there, and seeing how you're able to find that thing and truly not only like hold it close and really find the love in it, but really taking that love and turning it around and spreading it out to the world so that, you know, more people, whether they realize it or not, can truly find that love and connection in this kind of community. And seeing you do that in so many different avenues, in so many different ways, like, I cannot tell you how much I love and appreciate and support every little thing that you're doing. And I cannot tell you how excited I am to see whatever may be coming next, whether it be more of the My Little Pony stuff, whether the second channels allow you to explore more possibilities. Like, knowing that you have that love and passion for this stuff in the first place makes me excited, and I'm going to be rooting for you every single step of the way with whatever you're going to be doing. The long and short of it is...
I honestly, if I can just return the favor, I'm impressed that when Tipsy gave me a shout out to you, and you provided me with some of these questions, and I have been in interviews before that are really flat for a better word, but this is the first interview I think I've given where I'm like, oh, that actually sounds really interesting, and I know that it's really interesting because I was on the show and we talked for an hour and a half about crappy reality shows, but knowing you seem to have a very similar appreciation, and I cannot wait when this comes out to kind of just to go consume more of that, because whatever you have here, I'll admit I wasn't aware of this, before you had me on the pod, but this is the kind of stuff that I live for, is just kind of gushing about that stuff, even if it's not your thing. I think that this is some of the most engaging stuff that I've had somebody sit down and talk with me about, so I'm really, really excited that you have me on.
Well, at the end of the day, thank you for taking the time to do this. Thank you for being so open and gushing about this kind of stuff, and you know, no matter if I'm one of the few, one of thousands, hopefully one of many more in the future, I cannot wait to see what happens next. And I genuinely thank you for the kind words. They really do mean a lot. Thank you.
You've done a great job.
At the end of the day, I just got to say thank you so much, Johnny. It really means a lot.
No, thank you very much.
Now, if people want to know why exactly we've been gushing for, a good hour and a half, 2 hours at this point, however long we've been recording, go ahead and plug your stuff for the people at home.
Hi guys, my name is GatorGoatJohnny, and I go by Gator or Johnny or John, my legal name. I run a YouTube channel entitled GatorGoatJohnny, where I cover almost exclusively My Little Pony related content. I have a second channel coming out sometime next year. There are a lot of things I want to talk about that aren't My Little Pony focused, because the idea of being multi-fandom and having multiple interests should be the default and not something you have to talk about. So I cannot wait to gush more in the future. If like Nate, you aren't a huge fan of My Little Pony or it doesn't interest you, I tell everybody, give it a shot. I think it's an interesting franchise, but if it's not for you, I understand. But that's where you can find me. I'm also on Blue Sky at GatorGoatJohnny, and if I find it, I will post a link to some of the cruddy short films that I've made. But it's been fantastic having me.
It does lead me to one last question that I forgot to ask way in the beginning of the podcast or whatnot. How did the name GatorGoatJohnny come to be?
I'm a little stickler to that, because I'll tell you what, I was originally friends with somebody I was friends with somebody who was an animator, and I had some spare dough, and I said, you know what, I'm 30, I can order art of whatever I want. So I had a guy draw me, I'm looking at it right now, the blue Zord from the 1995 movie, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, the movie.
Okay.
And it's up there. And when they posted it, they said, this is art for @JohnnyAGoat, because I have a very common Spanish last name, and a lot of the usernames were taken. So at the time, I just went with Johnny A Goat, and when he tagged me, I'm like, that's gonna need to be changed. And I'll be really honest, I like those two animals a lot. There's not a lot going for it. I have a really strong affinity for just grumpy reptiles, and then for like farm goats. Probably because when I was real young, I was in the second grade, they brought out They brought a farm out, and I think a goat tried to eat part of my shirt.
Okay.
And I think that was like a formative year for me. It's been just a gentle affinity ever since.
That's fair. That's understandable. It does also lead me to one more last final question before we sign off or whatnot. Obviously, with how you present yourself when it comes to your pony form or whatnot, why did you go with the battery symbol for your cutie mark?
Ooh, I'm a big fan of found footage films. That's
Okay.
half of it. Half of it is I really love found footage films. Also, I don't believe in self-diagnosis, but I'm starting to believe I've got some sort of manic depressive thing that has been in my life for a long time. I get very excited about things, and then I decompress and I'm by myself. So
Okay.
a lot of that is representative of the battery that I have. It's being excited about things, but knowing when to take time to rebuild yourself and rebuild kind of your energy levels, so you're being kind to yourself in terms of mental health.
That honestly, that both reasons, very valid, very understandable, and very interesting. I'm glad to hear that you found a way to incorporate that into how you present yourself when it comes to this kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any final words before we sign off?
I just want to go watch old. Can I ask Nathan, how old are you?
I am 28 years old.
Okay, so we both came. You're a little younger, but we both came into that same mode. Because all I'm thinking right now is, as soon as I hang up, I'm gonna go watch some Powerpuff Girls, or I'm gonna watch some John R. Dilworth. I need some comfort food right now. I've been talking for like an hour and a half.
Or maybe you can go find the real Gilligan's Island and see if you can go.
That I didn't want to say it, but I'm gonna try to pirate that.
Honestly, go for it. And let me know where it is, because I only remember it, but I think I remember watching like the last episode of it, if I remember correctly.
I haven't watched it since it aired, so it's been 20 years.
Yeah, there you go. That's your homework for everyone else at home, kids. Go find the original real Gilligan's Island. But with that, all I've left to say is, for the people at home, if you can, please pay your artists.
I agree with that. Yeah, can I I don't want to stomp on your thing. Yeah, please pay your artists.
Tell me what's wrong, tell me it's parts in motion. Sing me a song, tell me your eyes can all open. Show me it all, pick me up in the car you drove when you used to call. Show me it all.
Thank you so much for sticking around to the end. If this is your first time listening, I greatly do appreciate it. Like I said in the intro, I really did not know what I was getting myself into when Tipsy recommended me Johnny, but honestly, I am so glad we had this conversation. It was such a fun chat. And Johnny, if you've gotten up to this point, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. I sincerely cannot wait to see what you're going to be producing from here on out, because I know it's just going to be full of love and passion, no matter what that may be. Speaking of love and passion, I gotta thank you guys for your love and passion for my love and passion, aka this podcast. We actually hit it. We actually hit the goal. I cannot tell you how much it really means to me that we actually got that goal. I will be honest with you guys. There are times where I get downtrodden by what I'm doing here. There are times where I get in my own head thinking, there's no one really watching this. There's no one really caring about this stuff. At the end of the day, I know I'm in my head. I'm going to say that first and foremost. But if nothing else, like, seeing the amount of love and support, whether it be the recent, like, major, like, strong love and views that we've gotten for the past couple episodes of the podcast, to hitting this milestone, you guys reaffirm whatever doubt I may have, and I cannot thank you guys enough. And now you guys are going to be part of a legacy of my body for the end of time. I mean, to be fair, it's not like I didn't want a tattoo in the first place. I just needed a reason to get it more than anything else. I feel like with this and some other things that have been going on in my life, there's been a good bit of changes going on. But they're all changes for the better. And I sincerely hope that the changes for the better do keep coming. Because there are some things, I'm sure you guys, hell, I fucking bitched about it online and stuff before that, but there have been changes for the worse out there. But, you know, I'm in a good place, both with this podcast and just in general in life. And I cannot thank you guys for being there by my side, showing that love and support day in and day out, and really just giving me more of a reason to keep going with this, giving me more of a drive to go further with this. You guys mean the world to me. And I sincerely hope that whatever state of mind that you're in, good, bad, struggling, thriving, just know that I sincerely hope for the best for you guys, because you guys deserve nothing but the best. Because especially when it comes to this community, you guys give a lot. I see it every single time, and I cannot thank you guys enough. So let's keep it going. Let's keep spreading that love, whether it be for the podcast itself or for the incredible people that I keep bringing on the podcast. Keep up that love no matter what.